catering. Did you order catering or
No,
it's not?
nothing to do with me.
So who is who organized?
I don't know. What I do want to know about is sound from the
Yes.
video.
Yeah, sure.
But we used to have it. Do we know what the issue with the sound is?
No, it was working 5 minutes ago.
Should we carry on about it?
Yeah, maybe it has the subtitles. So
It's been 4 years since the ECMWF began implementing the Copernicus Climate Change Services for the European Union's flagship Earth observation program, Copernicus. After signing the delegation agreement, the C3S team began to publish the first monthly climate updates and developing easy-to-use end products. COP21 saw almost every nation making a commitment to the planet with the Paris Agreement. We were on hand to set out how C3S can provide valuable tools and key data to support decision-making and mitigation efforts into the future. In our mission to provide enhanced free climate data, we established our sectoral information system to help societal and business sectors such as water, energy, agriculture and insurance improve decision-making and planning regarding climate mitigation and adaptation. Time for our most powerful global climate monitoring tool to date, ERA 5. This improved version makes greater use of satellite observations and delivers better spatial resolution. 2016 was confirmed as the warmest year on record. The C3S provides reliable and up-to-date transnational information. The value of C3S data began to be revealed in real-world use cases, such as Heineken's Brewing a Better World, which has the goal to make the company climate neutral by 2020. And it's not just business that has benefited. Take irrigation. Italy's Ecosistema employed C3S data to assist the local irrigation authority make projections on future water supply for crops in the Castiglione district. The Euronews channel has begun airing exclusive daily 24-hour air quality and monthly global climate updates. C3S is now part of Europe's TV broadcasts, making our data more relevant in daily life. Presenting our summary to the EU Parliament, we showed the offspring of our work. Phone apps which provide air quality information and emerging businesses delivering assessment of renewable energy resources. Launched in June, the Copernicus Climate Data Store is a game-changing offering which provides free and open access to climate data. CDS is today at the heart of what we do, providing information about past, present and future climate through a unified web interface. The CDS Toolbox enables users to develop custom-made applications.
Hello, welcome to this session on Copernicus and the Copernicus Climate Change Service. Now, there are not many people in this room. My microphone is working, but we are broadcasting on a live stream, so people outside this event can watch. So I would ask all the panelists and the commissioner to remember to talk into the microphones because people are listening, even if it's not being projected in this room. So my name is Helen Czerski. I'm moderating this session, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of Copernicus to this session about the global reach of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, which is a brilliant thing, the EU's flagship Earth observation initiative, which provides services and data that get to the public, as we saw, that can be used. And to introduce this session, it's a great pleasure to welcome the European Commissioner for Internal Market, Entrepreneurship and Industry Entrepreneurship and SMEs, and that is Elżbieta Bieńkowska.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say a few initial words because this is our proud. The Copernicus program is really proud of the European Commission. Our space policy is going extremely well for a few years, and so I want to present a little bit. I know that there's also web streaming, live streaming of this event, and this is even more important for me because, as maybe some of you know, I'm Silesian. I was born in Katowice and I still live here, so it's important for me to be a kind of host of this event. I want to say a few words on the climate change service of the Copernicus program, maybe highlight just in a few words the key achievement of the system. As we all know, the Copernicus is the Union's Earth observation and monitoring program. It's really world top class. It's a genuine program, and again we are proud of this. It relies on 7 Commission's own satellites, as well, of course, a large number of contributing missions. And the key objective is to provide information and to provide services, first, of course, to inform the policies at the European and national level, but also, of course, to support the implementation. It is obvious that turning petabytes of observation into really value-added services requires very highly advanced expertise and processing, and such activities are entrusted to a number of entities. We are really best of the best in their respective sectors, areas, and the European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasting is one of them. So I want also to thank you for co-organizing this event. It operates 2 Copernicus services, so Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service and the Copernicus Climate Change Service, and we are today here to discuss the last one. This service provides consistent, authoritative information, and it's often as both our programs, Copernicus and Galileo, it offers free and open access to climate data and tools based, of course, on the best available science. It also offers the very specific indicators on the impact of the climate change on various sectors of economy, on various sectors of society. The service, as we all know, has been operational only since September. It is already helping national climate service providers in both sectors, public and private. But of course, climate change is global, so it must also work together with other international initiatives. Through the work of the scientific teams involved in Copernicus, the service contributes also to the work of the International Panel for Climate Change, but also importantly contributing to the systemic observation feeding into the stock-taking process defined in the Paris Climate Agreement during the COP 2021. But what I want to underline that this is just a start. Given the importance of the climate change for the EU, we want to build on the services under the next long-term EU budget. We have just made this summer we have made the new budgetary proposals. We are proposing to develop new and additional elements for the climate change service, reflecting first the technical and scientific advances, but also emerging policy needs, especially here in Europe, because we want to keep our leadership in fighting the climate change. Possible new services, let me mention just one sentence on this, would be to monitor CO2 emissions caused by humans, or anthropogenic emissions as we call it. This would help countries to assess their efforts to reduce CO2 emissions, and hopefully we'll have enough sources for this. So I want to conclude again stressing, as in the beginning, how important this program for us is, how proud we are of the quality of the data and pictures it provides, and I want to hand over, of course, to the next speakers to explain different aspects of the Copernicus Climate Change Services. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bieńkowska. So next we're going to hear from Florence Rabier, who is the Director General of the European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, ECMWF, who play a crucial role in taking Copernicus data and turning it into services that are useful to the public. So, Florence.
Okay, thank you very much. So, For those of you who might not be very familiar with ECMWF, or at least in the realm of climate change, I would like to briefly explain our role. So ECMWF stands for European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasts, and we produce global numerical weather predictions for the national Met services of our member states, and more broadly for operational and research centres around the world. So we are the fruit of European collaboration. The idea started very early in the 1970s, at a time when most leading and influential individuals in our field and in politics had experienced the Second World War. So at a scientific level, World War II did highlight, if need be, the importance of weather predictions. But at a more ideological level as well, it did create a need for closer European collaboration. And weather was the perfect example of where Europe could work together, could pool its national resources into a shared pot, and achieve a common goal, which was to predict the weather much further than the 2 to 3 days capability at the time. But the concept was not just financial, it was also, most importantly, scientific. Our founders found a way to get the best scientific brains in Europe to come together with the objective to address the type of scientific challenges that no single nation should have to face on its own. And we can all agree that climate change definitely fits that description. So it's only natural that over the years, the same brain who've developed weather forecasting and the best European weather prediction in the world should have been expanded that excellence in Earth system modeling towards the neighboring fields of atmospheric composition and climate monitoring, flood early warning, among others. So in those early days, European was already leading the way through research projects in the field of climate research. But more recently, as Commissioner said, we were entrusted by the EU with the operation of two of the services, the Climate Change and the Atmosphere Monitoring Service. It's okay, thank you. And we are really proud to be part of what is possibly the most ambitious and visionary program on climate change in the world, bringing not only our expertise in atmospheric science, but also our broad network of collaborations across the world, from the United States to China, Japan, Brazil, Africa, Australia. Our supercomputing capability allows us to make the most of the wealth of Earth observations, which is the space part of the Copernicus program. And after only 4 years in the program, we are fully operational in these two services, serving millions of users around the world and showcasing, if need be, European leadership. So what's important to note is that is only the beginning. We operate this, but it's not an end in itself. And these cleverly pave the way and build the scientific foundations for the monitoring of man-made anthropogenic carbon emissions, as already mentioned, which is necessary if we want to implement the Paris Treaty. So these are moments where we can really collectively be proud of those European achievements, and even more so of the global network of partnerships that Europe has built on these topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florence. And next we're going to hear from the head of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, which you will hear referred to as C3S, because we all like acronyms, and that is Jean-Noël Tepot.
Thank you. Okay, do you have a beamer? Anyway, oh yes, it's here, sorry. Okay, so good morning everyone. And on behalf of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this side event and be given the opportunity to give you an overview of what the service is about in a few minutes, and how it has become an important asset globally, but also for economic sectors in need of climate information. So I will try to use this. This is me now. Okay, so the C3S mission. So let me start by saying that we are charged by the European Commission to develop information services in support of climate change adaptation and mitigation. So this means that we provide access to data about climate change and its impacts that can help planning and decision making by government agencies, local authorities, businesses, scientists, and citizens. So our mission, as you can see, has 3 elements. First, providing consistent and authoritative information about climate, past, present, and future, and focusing really on data quality, traceability, and transparency. This is very important. Second, building on existing capabilities and infrastructures at national and European levels, but also worldwide, so taking advantage of all the excellent science that is being done already. And the third one is stimulating the market for climate services in Europe. And indeed, we see ourselves as enablers of downstream sectors, and you will hear about it in a few minutes. What we provide is data, tools, and good practices. So last but not least, you will see that European economic interests go much beyond Europe, and this is why there is a global dimension to Copernicus in general, and also to its climate change service. Okay, so what do we provide to our users in a nutshell? So it's access to historical observations and climate reanalysis to monitor climate change. Reanalysis is a way of combining models and observations to provide a complete description and consistent description of the atmosphere for the last few decades. We are already providing 40 years of data today, and we will provide 70 years very soon at a resolution that has not been achieved so far, 30 kilometers for the upper atmosphere and 9 kilometers for land continental surfaces. Seasonal outlook, global products are also part of the portfolio for C3S, as well as climate scenarios going to the end of the century, and again taking advantage of the science that is being done already. For example, the CMIP runs that the IPCC is using for the assessment that it's produced. And based on this climate data, C3S has engaged with many economic sectors to transform this data into actionable information. And you will hear my 2 colleagues, Alberto and Cristiana, walking you through these activities. Okay, so that's one example of what we are doing. I take one. We are doing many of these, but this is one example showing how from a measurement, so in that case a satellite along track measurement, we can generate global ocean monitoring indicators, which are one of the most critical indicators for climate change. And this work has been done by a company called CLS in Toulouse, France. So C3S does a lot of this in response to societal demand to climate information. So the way we do it, in fact, we are providing access to data, and by providing a one-stop climate data store, which is now operational, and deliver climate information to thousands of users already. As was mentioned by the Commissioner, we've been operational since last summer. So what's new with this compared to the existing? You may wonder. Well, where Copernicus and C3S make a real difference, it's really about providing easy access to the data, provision of tools, relevance of information for sectors, and also assessments, data quality, user support, and documentation. Now, we are supporting European agencies like the European Environment Agency, and this is what we are paid for in a way, but we go much beyond this. And for example, we are very happy that our data and products are used by organizations like the World Meteorological Organization, and we will hear from Max about it in a minute. And we are also happy that these indicators contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals and to the UNFCCC process in general. This is one example of the sectoral applications that are harnessed to the service. You will hear about the water and the energy sectors in a minute. This is another a very important sector, which is agriculture. And this is just an illustration of the number of indicators that can be produced from the C3S data to address these important economic sectors. And this is a work done by University of Wageningen in the Netherlands. So our strength, I think, it has to be acknowledged that the success of C3S is really based on the fact that we are building this service with a fantastic scientific and application community, and this is why I think the service is so successful. I must say that Copernicus has been a driver to catalyze all this effort, all this energy, and all this scientific knowledge to address such an important issue that is climate change. And I think I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean-Noël. And I think that the Copernicus Climate Change Service really is one of the most exciting developments under the Copernicus umbrella. Next, we're going to hear from Max Delay, who's the Director of Climate Prediction and Adaptation at the World Meteorological Organization, on how important this data is in helping countries adapt to the problems of climate change. Max. Clicker here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, everybody. I'll see if I can, there we go. So I'm going to connect the C3S initiative into a global initiative that was announced in 2009 and launched in 2012 called the Global Framework for Climate Services, focused on a component of the GFCS, which is called the Climate Services Information System, of which the C3S implementation is giving a huge boost. So this slide shows the elements of a climate service information system. It's from a report that was published by the World Bank, USAID, and WMO on valuing weather, water, and climate. And so you have the elements of climate services, the observations, the data management, the forecasting, and so on. But when you zoom out and you look at the complete value chain for climate services, you see that that is just one part of it, the part that WMO certainly contributes most to, and I think that's where you would position C3S also. But it also, to generate socioeconomic benefits, you have to have an interaction with stakeholders in climate-sensitive sectors like agriculture, health, water, energy, and so on. And those users have to take better decisions, and those decisions have to lead to good outcomes, and those outcomes somehow need to be documented as having been beneficial. So while we focus on this part of it, we have to be thinking about how that whole value chain works. Now, doing that on a global scale, let alone in Europe, is quite a challenge. There are a lot of potential users, and there's a lot of ground to cover. So the engine that we have designed to try to help with this globalization is the regional operationalization of the Climate Services Information System. So we have ACMOD here, for example. Andre Kamga is the regional climate center centered over West Africa, covering all of Africa. The national level in this diagram shows the historical range of services that Jean-Noël already described. This is where the National Meteorological Service can interact with these stakeholders, figure out what are the high demand priority products, and begin to co-design with those stakeholders. Do they need a forecast for agriculture? Do they need inflow into a reservoir? Do they need an index for malaria control? Whatever the case may be. Then, as you move up in the slide to the regional and the global levels, the meteorological services also make other contributions. They contribute observations, they contribute data sets, and those are pooled at the regional level, and they are also fed into the global system, which is what allows these seasonal models that are run at a global scale to issue the kinds of forecasts that they do, because they're based on observations that come from all around the world. But the contributing meteorological services and regional centers also benefit greatly from that value added, because if you move across the slide to the right-hand side, those products come back down with a big value added to the country level to support decision making. And I think we've already seen in the previous slide how much value is being added by the C3S, both in terms of historical data, but especially in terms of the forecasts on the different timescales, because these forecasts are something that no country in the world can really do by itself. They depend on the global centers to do that. And down on all the way on the right-hand side, the meteorological services, again, can be on the front lines of documenting the socioeconomic benefits from the use of these products. So this infrastructure exists globally. Right in the middle of the top slide, I don't know if this is a pointer, there's ECMWF. It's one of the 12 or so global producing centers of long-range forecasts in the WMO system. And then here in the lower right, we have the Regional Climate Center Network. Among all of these centers, there's an enormous resource of data and products, but it is very difficult for many of the countries to really access and use in a very systematic way. And this is where C3S is making a huge contribution. This is C3S in the upper right there. Look how organized it is. This is the WMO system in the lower right. It's a, let's just say it has a lot of moving parts. And so the C3S is now providing very structured access to the kinds of data and products that you need to inform these climate-sensitive decisions. And in WMO, we do have some tools, the WMO information system and something, the global data processing and forecasting system, that can help build out of the C3S and bring more order to what the other centers are producing around the world. So I think this is my last two slides. Now, how to organize all this. So, as some of you would know who have been involved in this for a while, around the world now we have a very long-standing, decades-old set of regional climate outlook forums. And these forums are usually organized by the regional climate centers, and they involve all of the national meteorological services in the regions. And they have a long history of engaging users and defining user needs in the various sectors. We are now starting a process with those centers. Oh, and I should also say, there is a fair amount of project money now that is distributed around the map, including this Global Framework for Climate Services ACP project, which is funded by EC DevCo, that can help pay for this process. So we have a calendar of the regional climate forums, and we are now starting to work with each one of them on this operationalization of this complete value chain. And C3S, through a white paper that we have developed, we have figured out a way that we can cooperate with C3S to make sure that the C3S products are fully available in this process, and that feedback on the use of it comes back out of it. So we're very much looking forward to this next phase and very appreciative of the C3S for the contribution that it's making. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. And it's great. What we can hear here, I think, is this story of integration. There's a huge amount of data, and these services are feeding into things in lots of different ways. And from the regional, we're now going to go to the global. And our next speaker is Florin Vladu, who's the Program Officer at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And he's going to talk about the importance of climate data from a global perspective.
And that is the instrument that we can develop and lead the different
No, so good morning, everybody. So my role here will be to speak a bit about how all this discussion with climate services is reflected in at the global level, in particular in the UNFCCC negotiations. So we are also using a value chain in our situation, but we are casting the net a bit wider. Yeah. So we look to observations, and you see here we have a series of major players. Which are providing observations, WMO, GCOS, with essential climate variables, COs, and so on, and GEO. And we look to research. These observations are the basis for running the models, the climate models. And we have here the main, a main player, the World Climate Research Program, as well as others. Yeah? And we look to climate services, which are integrating somehow these two. and providing information in easy to use, sector-specific manner. And we look to assessment of all this information, which is mainly done by IPCC. And all this information comes to our policy process. Yeah, in our policy process, we have the subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice. You have seen the body concluding its work last week. And we usually have a session in the summer where we deal with research, a session in the winter where we deal with systematic observation. And at this conference, we had the conclusions prepared on systematic observations. And you can imagine at every session we discuss various issues linked to all this value chain. I mean, we discuss about essential climate variables, GCOS implementation plan, carbon budget, sea level rise, other indicators, observed warming, and so on. And this time we were informed by the 1.5 report, which was also included in the conclusions. So you have seen probably on Friday there was a big debate on the conclusions, and we could not even agree on how to finish these conclusions, so the conclusions have been forwarded to the next session. Yeah? But in those conclusions we had elements which I will come back, which are linked to climate services, and I will explain a bit about this. In my group we also deal with the global stocktake and the review of the global goal on limiting global warming to 2 degrees. And we also deal with interfacing with other work streams. For example, the work streams of an adaptation. We kind of create an interface between the systematic observation community, research, assessment community, and those work streams. So that's a global picture where we operate. And now, of course, we also need at this level some kind of climate services integrated. For us, for example, global warming. Where are we in terms of global warming? It's an important service. And we can argue that there are still development in that area. I mean, you have seen the 1.5 report where we have a definition of the global warming and how to be measured, and I'm sure Copernicus will consider that. We dealt with regional workshops, and we had a workshop in East Africa, I think, where we had a combination of Copernicus, Vigos, and UNFCCC, which is a very interesting workshop where they could, participants could get hands-on on using the Copernicus data. And that was one part where they received exactly training on doing that, and the other part was discussing the benefits of those countries providing input to the climate data store, so enhancing the data availability. And we had in the conclusions, which unfortunately we lost, also some recognition on the importance of climate services. Yeah? So that's a picture of how we see everything coming together at our level. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to use too many slides today. I will stop with this slide, but I would like to make some points. And one of the points is that you have to convert the discussion on climate services in the Paris Agreement, environment. What that means, it means that countries need to increase ambition. Yeah. And there are some mechanisms in the Paris Agreement to increase ambition. We talk about national determined contributions, which is type of information countries are providing, like a pledge for a 5 years or 10 years time frame. And we talk about the enhanced transparency framework, where countries are talking about what they did, what they managed to do on increasing their ambition, and we talk about the global stocktake when we will have a discussion at the collective level. So what can you do for national determined contributions? Yeah. Can Copernicus help them to identify mitigation opportunities, for example, which will allow them to increase their contributions? Yeah? can Copernicus help them in cities, in specific sectors, to identify such opportunities? Yeah? The national determined contributions include also adaptation. What would Copernicus do in link to the national adaptation plan and the contribution from the national adaptation plan to national determined contributions? Yeah? And this is a new area where you have to maybe revise your thinking and see exactly how you manage to link your work to specific instruments which we have in place now and which will be finalized here in Katowice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Florent. Now, Copernicus always amazes me in two ways, because we have the big integration of the systems that we've heard about, all these things working together to coordinate this enormous data flow, and that's amazing. But the other side of Copernicus, and especially the Climate Change Service, which I love, is when you get down to the use cases and all the different ways in which these services reach people on the ground, and that's what we're going to hear about next. So I'd like to introduce Alberto Troccoli, who's the Managing Director of the World Energy and Meteorological Council. He's going to talk about energy sector demonstrators.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be speaking here to this audience about one of the applications that we heard, which is on the energy sector. So having been involved in the conception and the planning of the energy exemplar with the World Meteorological Organization, it's a huge pleasure now to be part of the action and to actually implement what we wrote in that document, in the planning document. And we're really lucky to have C3S here take the lead globally on such sectors and applications. I want to talk about energy. This is the sector I focus, and I want to also tell you that and emphasize the fact that all the aspects of the energy sector, there's no part of the sector that is excluded from the impacts of climate. And obviously, wind, solar, and hydropower are the obvious ones, but think about also how the heat wave in 2013 stopped the production of nuclear power in France. So we are tackling this issue with the data produced by the C3S. There's a huge amount of climate data coming from C3S, but also there's a huge amount of data from the energy sector, particularly from the ENSTO-E, which is the European Organization for Transmission Operators, and they're providing a huge amount of data which we are using together with the climate data to put together the system for Europe, which is just a demonstration now for Europe, and hopefully we can expand later on to the globe using the expertise we are building in Europe. And we look a bit under the bonnet of what we've done in this 2.5-year project, which has now completed. And this is the structure we had. So without going into much detail, we just want to tell you that we looked at all the aspects to do with the quality of the data, the climate data, and then converted them into energy data, and then looked at how this data can be used and eventually also visualize it through this demonstrator at the bottom there. And we've done it, importantly, we've done it in very close collaboration with stakeholders, users of the energy sector. We've done it by having a number of workshops. Every 6 months we would have a workshop to really engage with the energy users. And we actually started from scratch, so we didn't want to have something that was pre-packaged. Instead, we went out and said, what would you like to see here with these products? And that's what we've done. We've done, as I said, several workshops, but we also tried to experiment with cartoons, had a bit of fun with that as well. And we ended up with this tool that is now available online. It's not updated regularly, but we'll see in a minute also what's happening. But this contains a huge amount of information that you can see a lot of. You can think this is a bit techy. We're also looking at making it a bit more appealing to a wider audience. But all these buttons tell you that there is a huge amount of information both for the climate and for the energy. So you can play with a lot of variables with solar radiation or hydropower or wind power. and compare what's happening in each country in Europe, look at the time series, look at the maps as they evolve. I don't have a movie here, but I encourage you to visit this site and play around a bit with this data. It's not just about this data. This is just one example for the radiation and to show you that what you can do with the maps we have. So we have, in this case, the projection for the RCP 8.5, so it's quite an aggressive emission scenario. But we see that in radiation there's going to be projected differences in with the gradient from north to south, where the north will receive less radiation and the south more radiation. So this is just one of the things you can appreciate with this tool, but there's much more to do with that. And what we're doing at the moment now is to actually take that tool together with another one that was developed in parallel and make it operational. So this will be updated regularly at monthly timescale. So we'll provide the historical data, but also seasonal forecasts and projections. So there is a wide variety of data that you can use for management of the energy, but also for the planning with the projections and of resource assessment using the historical data. So this is a huge, exciting moment for us. It's not just about the tool. It's also about seeing how this tool is now used by other projects. There are several projects that are building now their planning and their proposals around some of the tools that we developed here. So that's very heartening, and obviously we're happy for that. And just to, as a take-home message, I'd just like to emphasize the fact that the C3S, in our case, the energy part, there are several others. Together with other EU efforts, there is a lot of efforts coming from H2020, Euro4CS. There are a lot of climate services which are making Europe a leader worldwide, and we are happy for that. But we are working hard, as many of you, but just want to tell you that we're very excited and working a lot on the developments that the science and the tools can do to cooperate with the energy sector, provide the tools to tackle the pressing issues of climate change through resilience of climate and adaptation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alberto. And going from one of the massive world problems, energy, we're going to go to another, which is water. And we're going to hear from Christiana Fotiadu, who's the scientific project manager at the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Service, on how Copernicus services are helping the water sector.
Yes, hello. First, I will describe the global application on the water sector we have developed, and this is based on our experience developing the European application for the water sector and working now for the operational seasonal forecast hydrological application for Copernicus. So first of all, we work with users in this application, and the users are regarded as knowledge purveyors, and they're directly linked in the co-design of the application. And basically, their role is to bridge gaps between the service developers and the final client, the one who takes the policy, the decision policy at the end. So our users in this application are divided in two levels. We have the local knowledge purveyors all over the world and working on different applications on tourism, biodiversity, agriculture and transport. And we have the multinational companies like Heineken, PwC, Ramboll, UN Habitat and Oxfam, who are working on different regions of the globe and use the water application we have developed here. So a little bit on the production of this application. We produce both climate hydrological projections and and seasonal hydrological forecast, and it's a bit complex production, so I will not describe it. I will just say that user needs and feedback are integrated in this production, and we are quality assuring each step that we provide. So this is an example of the application information on the projection side. We provide to the users through, of course, using the C3S data, a large number of climate impact indicators related to the water sector, and we provide also confidence in interpreting the results and on the agreement of the sign of change of these indicators that they will have in the future using different projection scenarios. And the same production we do with the seasonal forecast. We produce global hydrological forecasts using the C3S data, and we aim at providing climate and hydrological forecast certainty to the user to be incorporated in their decision making. And this is an example of the seasonal forecast hydrological application demonstrator we developed for the C3S, and we provide skill information for all lead months using the seasonal forecast from ECMWF on a catchment global level. Through this production, all users and knowledge purveyors are guided through each step of the chain, whether it's technical bias adjustment or quality assurance or on climate communication, how to use this whole production and data to communicate to their clients to make the right decision on climate adaptation measures and further on. So I will close with some of the users. Unfortunately, my video wasn't able to play, so I will be around in the next session in Meet the Experts, where you can see real applications on how the users use the C3S data and these demonstrators to change or to improve climate adaptation measures in their local government authorities, presenting problems from different sectors. And I think it doesn't play. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, now we have 5 minutes for questions. Before we do that, I just wanted to pick up on what Christiana said there, that there is a Meet the Experts session directly outside after this. There's a little table and chairs. You'll have seen it on your way in. And Christiana and Alberto will be sitting out there to sit and have a chat with you if you've got more questions about those use cases. So before that, has anyone in the room got a question? We've got the opportunity to have a discussion if there are any questions from the floor, or we'll continue to talk about the Climate Change Service if not. No questions yet. Okay, if a question occurs to you, raise your hand, attract our attention. And so I have a question, I'm looking along the row here, maybe a little bit from all of you, but just about the future. We've heard about these services and what they're doing now and all the long, the Climate Change Service is new and it's already doing so much. What's coming in the future? What's going to happen next? Which of you is going to take that?
I will take both. There are several aspects to it. First, the service is very young still, and it has just been operationalized this year, basically. So within the next few years, it's about consolidation of what we are doing to make sure that everything is working as planned and everything. But we have already identified a few areas where we can add information. Decadal timescale is a timescale that we are not really putting any focus on at the moment, and this is an area where there is a lot of demand, so 5-10 years. So this is where we should put some effort. Attribution of extreme weather to climate change is also something that the media are in need, but the science is still being developed, so we need to also take stock of what the science has been delivering so far. And maybe the third, two additional aspects. The use of Sentinel data more proactively, because they've been launched in the air very recently. But we need to build climate data records for climate change aspects. So progressively, they will feed into the climate service, and we need to take advantage of this. And maybe the last is something that I think the Commissioner and Florence, the DG of ECMWF, have mentioned, is the CO2 issue. How to be able to monitor man-made emissions from CO2, and we believe, the infrastructure to do it, and the science is being built through a research project, not only by us but by other bodies as well. But we think that ECMWF, which is also running another service, as you mentioned, the atmosphere monitoring service, could be in a good position to contribute significantly to this venture.
Anything to add?
No.
No? Okay. All right.
Thank you. Just maybe to make a connection to a point that Florin made about the need to support an increase in the ambition on mitigation, and also to increase adaptive capacity, which is another Paris Agreement goal. These systems and capabilities that have been in the works now for literally decades are just coming online at a time when they need to be brought up to scale on a massive scale. And Alberto's and Christiana's presentations both showed how those capabilities are there. The question is how to make them available for widespread adoption so that we really start to see some changes in the temperature, the emissions, and these other global climate change indicators.
Of course, I would like to add to what Jean-Noël said, that the WMO has this IGE system, which is now pretty much in the center of attention for the CO2, not monitoring, but kind of looking at the CO2 and the mitigation, which is important. But also I would insist on the point that all these services have to be transferred to all countries. It's another part of the discussion. We see the services in Europe, they're very good, and we see lots of applications, but we don't see them in Africa or don't see them in Latin America yet. Thank you.
Have we acquired any questions from the floor very quickly? Oh, yes, suddenly lots of questions from the floor. Maybe over there, first of all, very quickly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there is one important time scale that we have, which is the sub-seasonal. And we really want next year to begin to generate the sub-seasonal timescale forecast to anticipate with dynamical model onsets, heavy rain period, breaks and bursts in the monsoon, things like that. And we would like to know if C3S is envisaging sometime next year to provide some products in that regard. Thank you.
For the moment, it's not really in C3S, but ECMWF is providing sub-seasonal to seasonal forecasts. And we also part of this WMO program, S2S, sub-seasonal to seasonal, where we gather predictions from 11 centers worldwide. And we gather that mainly for research, but also for applications. And we are going to provide the data to show the potential of these applications in different areas. So there is a lot of activities at the WMO with all the global sectors to develop also the sub-seasonal scale, which is very relevant for Africa in particular.
If I could just add I didn't have time to mention it, but in the ARCOF process, we're going to try to bring those forecasts out operationally, working with the regional climate centers. So we were going to, those Outlook forums have had seasonal as their main focus for many decades, but now we can start to try to work sub-seasonal and some of the other timescales into the operational systems as well.
Okay, we are almost at the end of our session, and I would like to invite Commissioner Bieńkowska back to the stage to provide some closing remarks.
Just to wrap up the session, I want to thank you warmly for your interventions. Okay, double mic. again for your intervention and for this short discussion. I think that it shows, and it's very visible, that the decisions that are taken at the very high European Parliament level, level of the political leaders, are really giving the results, to all of us. All of us being together fighting the climate change. It needs a global action, it needs a global effort, but our program is really a visible sign that this is working. Of course, the time is of essence now, and the unity is of the essence now. So thank you very much for being with us. I want to thank ECMWF, okay, good, ECMWF for your cooperation and for organizing this event. And I hope we'll have more money in the future, and I hope we'll be able really to develop the program to our benefit. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minkowska. And just to finish off, I would like to remind you that there is a Meet the Experts session right outside now with Christiana and Alberto. This event will be available online afterwards at the Copernicus YouTube site. And if you've got media questions, Silke is around somewhere at the back, so ask her. And I hope you've enjoyed this session. Oh, Silke's over there by the door. And also the big screen with Copernicus data just on the other side of that wall, and it's well worth having a look at that. So before you leave the room, please join me in thanking our 6 speakers and also the Commissioner for her attendance.